Imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror. Not the kind that shows your skin, your hair, your posture, but the kind that reflects something far more disturbing. Your moral reflection. And in this mirror, you don't see a saint. You don't see a good person. You see someone who's been lying to others, to themselves. Not because you're evil, but because you're exhausted. Exhausted from trying to be liked, from constantly policing your thoughts, from pretending you never feel envy, rage, lust, selfishness. You've been told these things make you bad, so you've buried them deep, and yet they leak out. In backhanded compliments, in guilt-driven overcompensation, in resentment that simmers beneath forced smiles. You're admired, maybe even respected, but you know it's fragile. One misstep, one unpopular opinion, and the illusion shatters. You're constantly walking a tightrope strung between approval and self-betrayal. Now ask yourself this: why is being good so draining? If morality is meant to elevate you, why does it so often feel like a slow spiritual death? Why does doing the right thing sometimes make you feel weak, small, or even invisible? And more importantly, who decided what good even means? You weren't born with a manual. You didn't emerge from the womb understanding virtue or sin. You were told, trained, molded. Teachers, parents, priests, social media influencers wrapped in moral armor, preaching compassion while weaponizing shame. So here you are tamed, compliant, and confused. You do what you're told. You apologize when you're not wrong. You avoid conflict. You virtue signal. You're not along with things you don't fully believe in. And in the quiet of night, when no one is watching, a voice inside you whispers, "This isn't me," but you silence it. 'Cause listening to that voice might cost you something. Love, status, identity, your place in the tribe. Let's speak plainly. You've become addicted to the performance of goodness. And like any addiction, it enslaves you. But here's the twist. What if the most dangerous people in history, those who rewrote empires, shifted the tides of civilization, and made the world bend to their will, weren't good people at all? What if they weren't trying to be? Niccolò Machiavelli, statesman, philosopher, the man whose name still makes moralists recoil, understood something most people are terrified to admit. He dared to ask, what if goodness is a trap, not a virtue, not a compass, but a leash? He saw how the obsession with appearing moral neutered kings destroyed republics and led entire societies into chaos. Not because morality is inherently wrong, but because in the hands of the weak, it becomes theater. He wrote not for saints, but for those who wanted to rule. And his advice was simple, unnerving, and revolutionary. It is far better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. You recoil, perhaps. Fear? That's monstrous. But wait, think. Really think. Have you ever loved someone you couldn't respect? Have you ever been kind to someone just to avoid confrontation? Have you ever said yes when every cell in your body screamed no? And what did it cost you? Because in the name of being good, you've probably let people walk all over you. You've probably said nothing when you should have roared. You've probably betrayed your own truth because you didn't want to seem selfish. But Machiavelli wasn't promoting cruelty. He was exposing hypocrisy. He saw that those obsessed with appearing moral often commit the most immoral acts under the mask of righteousness. He forced us to confront the paradox. The more you chase the image of being good, the more you lose touch with your real power. So now, look into that mirror again. Not the one that flatters, but the one that reveals. Who are you when you stop trying to be a good person? Who are you when you no longer ask for permission to exist on your terms? Who are you when you let go of the fear of judgment and embrace something more ancient, more dangerous, more real? If that question unsettles you, it should, because it's the beginning of a long overdue rebellion. The path ahead won't be clean, it won't be righteous, but it might be the first honest step you've taken in years. So let's go deeper. Let's peel back the mask and uncover the hidden machinery that made you this way. Not by accident, but by design. The question isn't whether you're good. The question is who benefits from your desire to be. Look closer. Beneath your lifelong pursuit of being good, the careful smiles, the over-explaining, the reflex to make yourself smaller lurks something far more ancient than morality. Fear. Not just fear of getting things wrong, but a deeper, older fear. The fear of exclusion. To understand why this matters, you have to go back, not decades, but millennia. Back before laws and institutions. Back to the tribe. In that world, survival depended on one thing above all: belonging. To be left out was to be vulnerable not to judgment, but to silence. Not to danger, but to disconnection. And so, evolution etched into your nervous system a powerful instinct. Stay accepted. Stay safe. That tight feeling in your chest when someone disapproves. That voice in your head rehearsing how to apologize. That hesitation to speak freely. That's not weakness. It's ancient programming. Your biology whispering, blend in. Don't stand out. But here's the paradox: our world has changed, but that instinct hasn't. We're not running from predators in the woods anymore. We're navigating workplaces, social media, dinner tables, 1,000 invisible eyes, watching, reacting, judging. Carl Jung understood this tension. In his work on the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world, he warned of a quiet danger. The danger of confusing the mask for who we really are. The persona is what one is not, but what oneself and others think one is. The longer you wear it, the harder it is to take off. You begin to filter yourself before you speak. You begin to perform kindness rather than feel it. You begin to pursue virtue not out of truth, but out of habit. But this isn't just psychology. It's philosophical. Many moral traditions, rich and profound as they have, also taught a subtle message. That your raw humanity is something to overcome. Desire? Be cautious. Anger? Suppress it. Power? Distrust it. Self-interest? Replace it. In the pursuit of being good, you begin to cut off parts of yourself. You sideline your voice. You hide your wants. You second-guess your instincts. You become fragmented, externally praised, but internally disconnected. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke passionately against this divide. He called it slave morality, not in the historical sense, but in the psychological one. A morality born not from vitality, but from the fear of being seen. The noble man creates his own values. The slave man says, "You are evil, therefore I am good." In other words, we sometimes declare ourselves virtuous not from strength, but as a strategy to avoid judgment. So who benefits from this? Pause before you answer. Because here's where the pattern starts to show itself. Systems do. Institutions do. Cultures obsessed with order and compliance do. The more you worry about being liked, the more easily you can be guided. You become cooperative, polite, predictable. You speak when spoken to. You agree to be agreeable. You hold back your deeper questions not because they're wrong, but because they're inconvenient. Aldous Huxley saw this dynamic coming. In Brave New World, he imagined a future not ruled by force, but by comfort. Not by oppression, but by distraction. In that world, people didn't need to be silenced, they silenced themselves. Their individuality had been exchanged for ease. Their discomfort traded for approval. Even Viktor Frankl, who explored the human capacity for meaning under extreme conditions, warned that true freedom doesn't just require external liberty, but internal clarity. Without it, we surrender not to laws, but to expectations. He said, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And when we can't find courage, we distract ourselves with praise. So let's be honest. You weren't trained to be yourself. You were trained to be acceptable. You were encouraged to hide your edges. You were complimented for being easy to understand. You were discouraged from asking too many questions. And somewhere along the line, the message became clear. Be likable or be alone. That's why disapproval makes your stomach drop. That's why you hesitate before saying what you mean. That's why you'd rather bite your tongue than risk misunderstanding. But there's more. Because this shaping doesn't just change how you act. It changes how you see yourself. Jean-Paul Sartre described something called bad faith, the habit of living according to a script, instead of your own awareness. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. But what if what you've made is a version of yourself optimized for acceptancy, not truth? What if your politeness is a mask? What if your humility is just fear in formal wear? What if your morals are more about fitting in than standing firm? Ask carefully, because asking that question might just be the first real thing you've done in a long time. You wake up, look around your life, and everything seems fine. Your relationships are polite. Your job is stable. Your social media is tidy. But something's wrong. Not loud, not dramatic, just qu'il y a decay. A constant sense of low-grade dissatisfaction. Like a house built perfectly to code but missing a soul. You wonder why you can't feel alive in your own skin. Why intimacy feels hollow. Why decisions feel like différance. Why your deepest ambitions keep slipping away into someday. Here's why. Because your pursuit of goodness has become a sedative. It keeps you pacified. It keeps you agreeable. It keeps you safe. And in doing so, it kills you not all at once, but in small, civilized doses. Let's break it down. Not philosophically, not hypothetically, but psychologically, neurally, mechanically. 1. The cognitive consequence. Decision paralysis. Disguised as morality. Every time you try to be good, your brain enters conflict. Neuroscience calls it cognitive dissonance, when your actions don't align with your deeper instincts. Your prefrontal cortex, rational thought, fights your limbic system, emotion, and survival. But instead of resolving this conflict, most people suppress it. They make decisions not based on truth, but based on how those decisions will be perceived. You stop asking, is this true to me? You start asking, will this make me look kind? Will this offend someone? Will this make me seem selfish? And the result? Chronic indecision. A self-induced fog. You hesitate before speaking. You rewrite messages before sending them. You dilute your passions into something palatable. Your yes is never firm. Your no is always apologetic. Eventually, you lose the ability to hear your own instinct. And instinct, make no mistake, is not primitive, it's the root of power. But when the pursuit of moral safety overrides your inner signal, you become a slave to second guessing, a prisoner in your own nervous system. 2. The emotional consequence. Bitterness. Beneath the smile, you are praised for being good. You are celebrated for being nice. But no one ever asks what you had to sacrifice to maintain that image. Over time, this breeds a subtle kind of resentment. The kind you don't talk about. The kind that leaks out in sarcasm, passive aggression, harmless gossip. Why? Because you're constantly giving, constantly pleasing, and you rarely feel truly seen. You smile when someone interrupts you. You nod when your boundaries are crossed. You say, it's fine, when it's not fine. This is where toxic virtue begins. Not the absence of goodness, but the overgrowth of it. weaponized against the self. Psychologist Karen Horney described this phenomenon as the tyranny of the should. You should be kind. You should forgive. You should be better. And slowly, you split into two selves. The public moral, self-clean, filtered, acceptable. The private self-tired, angry, grieving, hungry for something real. You begin to resent the very people you try to help, not because they've wronged you, but because you've made your own suppression a form of virtue. And the more you suppress, the more brittle you become, until one day you explode or implode. Either way, you shatter. 3. The social consequence. Superficial connection. Deep loneliness. You might have friends. You might have followers. But do you have people who know your darkness and stay anyway? When you live for goodness, you curate your identity. You wear masks. You show the best angles. You say the right things. And that version of you, the good version, is always surrounded, but never truly known. Authenticity becomes terrifying. Because what if people saw your ambition? What if they saw your jealousy? What if they knew you were angry, insecure, wild? So you hide it. And you call it maturity. You call it being the bigger person. You call it emotional intelligence. But deep down, you know, you've traded intimacy for image, truth for tolerance, belonging for approval. And in doing so, you become surrounded by people who like your mask, not you. This is the great irony. The more you perform goodness, the more alone you become. Because real connection isn't built on performance. It's built on shared truth, even the ugly parts, especially the ugly parts. 4. The existential consequence. The erosion of will. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." Now consider this. What happens when even your will is borrowed? When your dreams are secondhand? When your morality is pre-approved? When your desires have been so cleaned, sterilized, and filtered that they're no longer yours? You stop dreaming vividly. You stop moving boldly. You shrink. Not just socially, but existentially. You don't just feel small. You feel unreal, like you're floating above your own life. Watching. Complying. Waiting. Waiting for what? For permission? For applause? For someone to tell you you're finally good enough? That moment never comes. Because the system you're waiting for validation from was never designed to give it. It was designed to keep you in place. You've now seen it, the toll this false morality takes. Not just on your behavior, but on your being. How it corrupts thought, distorts emotion, poisons relationship, kills your will. This is not theoretical. This is not abstract. This is the story of millions of lives lived just below the threshold of authenticity. Lives filled with quiet suffering, hidden fury, stifled brilliance. And unless you break, the cycle yours will be one of them. But here's the truth that should electrify you. You can break it. There is another way to live fierce, honest, unapologetically whole. But you won't get there by being good. You'll get there by being free. And freedom, true freedom, requires rebellion. The next part is not safe. It is not clean. It is not blessed by those who benefit from your compliance. But it is yours. Let's begin the rebellion. Enough. That's the word that forms in your mind, not as a whisper, but a war cry. Enough of biting your tongue until it bleeds. Enough of nodding when you want to shout. Enough of reducing your soul to a series of polite smiles and moral postures. You were not born to be a performance. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be whole. But be warned, rebellion doesn't begin with fire. It begins with clarity. And clarity is often brutal. Because once you see the cage, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the weight of your own chains, you must decide live as a ghost or fight to be real. So let us begin. 1. Reclaim the forbidden self. There's a version of you that never got to grow. The one who said no and meant it. The one who wanted things unapologetically. The one who could walk into a room without shrinking. This self wasn't killed by accident. It was buried by teachers, preachers, parents, lovers. By society's quiet demand. Be small. Be sweet. Be safe. And yet, it's still alive. In your rage. In your dreams. In your envy. Your lust. Your ambition. All the things you were told were bad or unholy or selfish. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. To him, virtue wasn't about piety. It was about effectiveness, about the courage to act when action was dangerous. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. Do you understand what he was really saying? Not that cruelty is power, but that power is not born from goodness. It is born from integration, from refusing to amputate your instincts in the name of social approval. Your shadow, as Jung called it, is not your enemy. It is your unlived power. So don't kill it. Don't hide it. Integrate it. Speak your anger without apology. Own your desire without shame. Let your ambition off the leash. This isn't about destruction. It's about completeness. The good person tries to amputate his darkness. The free person uses it. 2. Tell the uncomfortable truth. The greatest form of rebellion is not revolution. It's truth-telling. Because truth, once spoken, burns through every illusion. Speak the truth of who you are. The truth of what you want. The truth of what you feel. Do not soften it to be digestible. Do not package it to be palatable. Stop editing yourself for imaginary judges. You were not put here to be approved of. You were put here to be true. And yes, it will cost you. You'll lose friends who only liked your silence. You'll lose admiration from people who depended on your compliance. You may even lose opportunities that require your obedience. Let them go, because the reward is priceless. You will stop abandoning yourself. There is no paycheck, no applause, no validation worth that sacrifice. Sartre said, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Your trauma may not be your fault, but your silence is now your choice. Speak, and let the chips fall." 3. Practice strategic amorality. This is where it gets dangerous and liberating. You were taught that all morality is good, but Machiavelli knew better. He called this out for what it was: a useful illusion, a means to control the many by binding them with invisible chains. But here's the secret no one tells you. Morality is a tool, not a law. It is context-dependent, situational. It should serve you, not rule you. This doesn't mean you become cruel. It means you become strategic. Sometimes, telling the full truth damages unnecessarily. Sometimes, compassion without strength enables destruction. Sometimes, silence is not cowardice, it's calculation. You must learn to play the game without being devoured by it. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote, "A prince must learn how not to be good, not to become evil, but to become adaptive, to stop equating morality with obedience, to stop sacrificing survival for sanctity." So ask yourself, am I doing this because it's righter? Because I want to be seen as good? Am I helper? Am I just avoiding conflict? Is this kindness or cowardice dressed in virtue? Sometimes, the most moral thing you can do is refuse to play the moral role. 4. Kill the inner judge. Perhaps the most insidious control system isn't external, it's internalized. You don't need anyone else to punish you. You do it yourself. Every day. Every time you feel guilt for speaking your truth. Every time you shrink in shame after asserting yourself. Every time you replay a conversation in your head, wondering if you went too far. This is the superego, the internalized voice of your earliest authorities. Nietzsche called it the ascetic ideal, a hatred of life that lives inside you as conscience, a false god you pray to every time you betray your own instincts in the name of being better. You must kill this judge, not with violence but with disobedience. Every time you act against that voice, you weaken it. Every time you say, "No, I don't owe them anything," it crumbles. Every time you choose self-loyalty over moral performance, it dies a little more, until one day, you realize you don't need to ask permission to be yourself. You are no longer divided. This is sovereignty. 5. Build a new inner authority. Rebellion without reconstruction is nihilism. You've burned the false self. Now build the real one, not based on borrowed virtue but on chosen values. Ask yourself, what do I actually believe in? What matters to me beyond approval? What values will I live by, even when no one is watching? Create your own ethic, fierce, flexible, yours. It may not look like the morality you were taught. It may offend, it may confuse, but it will be real. And it will be enough to navigate life with power and presence. This is what Machiavelli offered, not cruelty, but clarity. Not license to harm, but permission to stop betraying yourself. And now you're standing at the edge. No longer a good person, not yet free, but ready. You've tasted the forbidden truth. That goodness, when defined by others, is a trap. What comes next is not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about awakening, becoming. You don't owe the world your virtue. You owe it your truth, and the courage to live by it. But there's still one more step, one last veil to lift. A truth so deep, so final it doesn't just change your beliefs. It redefines your very existence, and that is where we must go next. To the final, most dangerous, most liberating revelation. At last, you arrive where you were always meant to, not at the summit of moral purity, but at the crumbling altar of everything you once worshipped. Your eyes are open now, not just to the lies you were fed, but to the ones you told yourself. And beneath it all, beneath the rebellion and the fire, you come face to face with the truth that breaks the world in two. There is no such thing as a good person. Not in the way you were taught, not as a fixed identity, not as a certificate of virtue, not as an end state to be achieved. That was the final illusion, the master lie. You were chasing a ghost. Because here's the brutal, luminous, unshakable truth. You are not here to be good. You are here to become. Goodness is static. It locks you in place. It rewards sameness, not growth. It asks you to behave and not evolve. But you are a process, a paradox, a storm of contradictions wrapped in flesh. You are a multitude. You are capable of cruelty and compassion, of grace and vengeance, of selfishness and sacrifice. To try and carve yourself down to a good person is to murder every part of you that doesn't fit into that coffin. To try and fix yourself in goodness is to amputate your aliveness. Nietzsche warned us. Become who you are, not become better, not become nice. Become who you are, because you are not an answer. You are a question, a wild, unfolding, living question. The ultimate truth is not moral. It is existential. And here it is. There is no final version of you, no final role to play, no character to lock in. That fantasy of goodness, it was always a form of death. Because once you label yourself good, you must defend that label at all costs. You stop growing. You stop risking. You stop changing. But life doesn't care about your labels. It only asks, are you awake? Are you true? Are you becoming? So stop asking, am I a good person? Start asking, am I alive in this moment? Am I aligned with my truth? Even if it's ugly? Am I expanding, not shrinking? Because the world doesn't need more good people. It needs more whole people, people who can hold paradox in their chest, people who can wield their shadow with wisdom, people who are dangerous to lies, not obedient to them. And that brings us to the final paradox, the one Machiavelli understood, but could never say outright. The truly dangerous person is not the one who has no morality. It's the one who is free from the need to appear moral. That is true power. That is true sovereignty. And it is earned not by obedience, but by integration, not by hiding your darkness, but by making peace with it. You were never supposed to be clean. You were supposed to be whole. Now pause. Let this truth settle in your bones, not just your brain. You are not broken. You are not failing because you're not good enough. You are suffering because you're trying to be something that doesn't exist. You don't need to become a saint. You need to become yourself. And that means letting go. Let go of the masks. Let go of the need to be right. Let go of the need to be safe. Your truth is more important than your image. Your becoming is more sacred than your reputation. You've spent too long trying to win a game that was rigged from the beginning. A game designed not to help you grow but to keep you small and admired. Now you know the rules. Now you know the cost. Now you know the exit. Step through it. Because here's what no one told you. The moment you stop trying to be a good person, you become something infinitely more powerful. A conscious person, a creator, a mirror, a force. You'll lose people. You'll terrify others. But the ones who remain, the ones who rise with you, they'll see you. Truly. Deeply. Finally. And for the first time in your life, so will you. So where do you go from here? You walk back into the world not with a new mask, but with none. You speak not to be approved of, but to be heard. You act not to preserve an image, but to move toward your inner truth. You love fiercely. You draw boundaries without guilt. You choose what serves your evolution, not what makes you likable. You are no longer moral in the eyes of the masses. You are now dangerous to the status quo, because you cannot be guilted. You cannot be boxed. You cannot be owned. And that makes you free. So let the world call you selfish. Let them call you arrogant. Let them call you bad. Let them say, you've changed, because you've stopped being a puppet. You've stopped trying to fit into a system that profits from your guilt. You've remembered what you are. A sovereign being. A paradox. A god in the mud. A lion who remembered he wasn't a sheep. Not good. Not evil. Real. And that is the most dangerous thing you can be. End.